Okay, welcome everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Abam. This is our final share before Yom Tif, Chag HaPesach, Haba Aleinu L'Tova. And we're continuing the shir on Sefer Vayikra, which are dedicated by the Zakheim Mishpacha, by Dr. Zakheim, Le'iloi Nishmas, Rav Shlomo Eliezer ben Rabbi Yaakov Zakheim, Rivka Bas Tovia Halevi, and Rav Dov ben Rabbi Yaakov Tzia Koyen, the Gan Eden Timnu Chasam. Tonight's shir is dedicated anonymously, wishing everyone a Chag Kashar V Sameach. Also, it's Refuah Shalema for Shlomo Eliezer Zev Ben Chana Shav Refuah Shalema B'Soich Shar Chalei Yisrael. Okay, so if Yom Tov is coming, and I just want to make sure everybody bought enough of these Haggadahs. Make sure everybody has the English version, Spanish version, French version. If you want to say the Manishtana in French or Dayenu in French, it will definitely enhance your Seder and will definitely enhance the sales of the book, that's for sure. Also, Lashon HaKodesh, available. You can have 4 editions. You have 4 cups. You have 4 Lashonos of Geula. You have 4 Banim. Why not 4 new Haggadahs? Actually, when I went to have my crown put in, so the person, somebody heard the shir last week, he said, I want to show you something. So he opened up a box. He ordered every Haggadah I mentioned last week. Not mine. I don't know why he didn't get mine, but it's okay. I know it's because he already has it. He got the Shvilei Pinchas Haggadah. He got the Rabbi Yosef Engel Haggadah. He got the Yetzer Place Haggadah. And what was the 4th one? And Reb David Kohen Haggadah. He doesn't have Chaim Sheshbem. Only Reb David brought me Chaim Sheshbem, but that's on the side. I can't tell everybody about every Haggadah, then. Anyway, this shir was actually the first shir that I had in mind to give over in the season of Pesach, but it was developing. I wasn't sure how it was going to play out. But Baruch Hashem, Soif Masa b'machshava tchila. Okay, so we're all familiar that the Haggadah ends with a piyut called Chad Gadya. Chad Gadya, it sounds almost like a fable. There's a kid, there's a cat, there's a dog, there's a stick, there's a fire, there's water, there's an ox, there's a shoichet, there's a malchamaves. What does it have to do with the Seder? It's this long, drawn-out story. It sounds almost like a child story, and in fact, it's interesting that the Chidah says that let nobody mock Chad Gadya, because Chad Gadya, even though we don't know exactly where it's from, it must have very great significance. But what is the significance? What exactly is the meaning of Chad Gadya? Okay, so the Haggadah begins Halach Ma'anya. What language is Halach Ma'anya? Aramaic. And one of the main questions, one of the well-known questions on the Haggadah is, why does Chad Gadya start in Aramaic? So that already is precedent about Haggadahs in different languages, but why would we begin Chad Gadya in Aramaic? So you know that Rashi has a sefer. There's a sefer attributed to Rashi. It's called Sefer HaPardes, and Rashi's bothered. Why is the custom say Halach Ma'anya in Aramaic? Says Rashi, it's because of the mazikin. There are certain forces of damage, certain spirits of damage, that Chazal tell us. We know 6 things about the Shedim. In 3 ways they're like angels, and in 3 ways they're like people. They speak Lashon HaKodesh like malachim. So angels, the mazikim speak Hebrew, right? So if I meet them all the time, walking down the street, going for a walk. I see them all the time. It's like a daily occurrence. I see these mazikin. I can't get into exactly what they look like, but just take my word for it. I see them, and they speak Lashon HaKodesh. So therefore what? Why do we say Halach Ma'anya in Aramaic? Because in Halach Ma'anya we make a big announcement. We say Kol Dichven Yesef Yechal. Anyone who's hungry, come and eat. Now, if the demons are going to understand that we're inviting them to eat, guess who's going to be knocking on our door the night of the Seder? All the demons, knock knock, ding dong. Who's there? It's Mazikin. So since we make this very gracious invitation, anyone who's hungry, come and eat, we want to make sure that the mazikin don't understand the invitation. So we make sure to say it in Aramaic. Why? Because mazikin speak Lashon HaKodesh. They don't speak Aramaic. Says Rashi, Look at these words. Ilu hayu medabrim lashon hakodesh. If we would say it in Hebrew, hayu shoyma shanu oimrim. They would hear what we say. Kom yishu rav yavo v'yochel. Every homeless guy is going to hear what we're saying and come and eat. Every demon is going to hear. So they would ruin the whole Suda. Al kei noagu lo lashon haramis shelo yumavina ma shanu oimrim. So we say in Aramaic, so they don't understand what we're talking about. So basically, we say we give a nice invitation, but only the people that we want to understand the invitation. Okay. Is that true? Demons don't speak Lashon Kodesh? Demons don't speak Aramaic? Is that true? Demons don't speak Aramaic? You know, it's very interesting. We're going to say, not Friday morning this year, we're going to say on Shabbos, Kol Chamira v'Chamia. Right? We're going to say all 11, all Chametz. What language is Kol Chamira? Kol Chamira is Aramaic. Why in the world would we say Kol Chamira in Aramaic? By the way, if you don't speak Aramaic, then your declaration of Kol Chamira is meaningless. Right? If you say these words, Kol Chamira v'Chamia, and you're saying, well, with a lot of kavana and hislavos, pal, you're not davening. You're rendering your possessions ownerless. So if you don't know what you're saying, you know, people like to shuckle at the very interesting times. You know, like Kol Nidre, everyone's like crying and like this emotional tefillah. It's a lamdasha declaration that you're rendering void any declarations you're going to make from now and on. You know, but people don't know what they're saying, so they get very, very spiritual, especially if you go like that and you flutter your eyes, then you become very, very holy. But if you actually understand what you're saying, this is not like, these are halachic declarations. So why would we say Kol Chamira in a language that we don't understand? So the Arizal had a Talmud. His name was Rav Moshe ben Machir. He is the author of a tefillah, Moida Anil Fanecha, Melech Chai V'Kayam, Shehechazarta Bin Nishmasi, that was written by a student of the Arizal. And he says a very interesting reason why we say the declaration of Kol Chamira in Aramaic. He says like this. What sustains a person? Bread. A person needs bread to live. And the whole year, we need bread. And you can't be mezalzel bread, right? We don't step on bread. If we see it on the floor, we pick it up. We always treat bread with respect. Therefore, you know, there's an idea, if you don't respect something, you lose it. If you don't respect something, you lose it. You know, it's an idea that we find in many places. For example, David HaMelech once disparaged clothing. So when he was wearing clothing, the clothing didn't keep him warm. What do you mean the clothing don't? Either clothing work or they don't work. It's not like clothing is not subjective. No, everything in this world is subjective. You can only get out of something the level that you respect something. If you don't respect something, you lose it. It's a very important phenomenon to be aware of. Sometimes in life, a person has the ability to do certain mitzvahs, and they could lose it. And a person doesn't say, hey, why am I not able to do that anymore? It's a certain idea, it's a certain phenomenon. You're only given the privilege to enjoy something if you honor it. If you don't honor it, then you could lose that opportunity. So therefore, we have to show honor to bread. If we don't honor bread, we might not have it anymore. So therefore, if we're going to say, all the bread in my possession is ownerless like the dust of the land, it's disparaging to the bread. So therefore we try to say it more discreetly. We don't want to overtly disparage the bread because we need it. It's a way of, so to speak, showing honor to the bread. But then the Seder Hayom says further. You know why we say this in a Lashon that people don't understand it? Because if we would say it in Lashon Kodesh, the Mazikin would understand what we're saying. And they're going to be mekatreg that we're not treating bread with respect. So therefore the Seder Hayom says, we say it in Aramaic, so the Mazikin don't understand what we're saying. So again, this is another example. Mazikin don't speak Aramaic. Therefore we say halach ma'anya in Aramaic. We say kol chamira in Aramaic. Okay? That's what Rashi said. That's what the Seder Hayom said. Comes the Shulchan Aruch Harav, the Balatanya, and he says they're making a mistake. What's the mistake? Chazal only said that angels don't speak Aramaic. Chazal never said Mazikin don't speak Aramaic. In fact, Mazikin only speak Aramaic. Mazikin don't speak Lashon HaKodesh. So the Shulchan Aruch Harav says, even though Shulchan Aruch Harav will quote the Seder Hayom, not when it comes to Kol Chamira. He says it is wrong to say that the reason we say Kol Chamira in Aramaic is so that Mazikin don't understand. Just the opposite. It's the only language they don't understand. And not only, and therefore, you can't say the reason halach ma'ani is in Aramaic, so the Mazikin don't understand, that's the language they speak. That's the kasha of the Shulchan Aruch Harav. I found Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef, somebody just came to the shir last week from Eretz Yisrael. He brought me a big sefer, Yalkut Yosef. I said, wow, like the 53rd volume or something, you know? You ever see this? And in it, I had an inscription. He got Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef to write me an inscription with his blue stamp. It was very cool. Anyway, Rabbi Yitzchak Yosef writes in a sefer that how could the Seder Hayom say that Kol Chamira is in Aramaic so that the Mazikin don't understand? How could Rashi and the Pardes say that Halach Ma'ani is in Aramaic so the Mazikin don't understand? Just the opposite. The Zohar HaKadosh says the reason we say Yehi Shmei Rabbah in Aramaic is to destroy the Mazikin who only speak Aramaic. And then he says, V'achar kach, I found the Shulchan Aruch Harav also says so. So therefore, friends, we're up the creek without a paddle. Why do we say Halach Ma'anya in Aramaic if it can't be because we don't want the Mazikin to understand? It's the only language they speak. Could it be that we start the Haggadah with a Lashon that the Mazikin, that's the only language that the Mazikim speak? That's the opening of tonight's shir. Now let me show you where the shir started from about 5 weeks ago. So my friend, Reb Herschel Friedman, who is the head of Machon Maggid Harakiah, who they published the Sfarim of Rabbi Yosef Engel, and actually Rabbi Yosef Engel left in his tzava that anybody who helps publish his Sfarim, he'll be a Meilus Yosher for you. He has a team of like a minion of Talmidei Chachamim working around the clock on the Sfarim of Rabbi Yosef Engel. They published Lekach Toiv, Asfan D'Oraisa, many of the drashos of Rabbi Yosef Engel. They put it on Bereshis already, on Shemos. They just came out with a spectacular Haggadah Shel Pesach. Haggadah Shel Pesach, Tiferes Yosef. So now, when it came to America, I was the second person to get it in America. And I told him, when it comes, I want to be the first person. But I was the second person. Because first you had to give it to the person who paid for it. I just asked for it. I'm the guy who asked for it, but the guy who paid for it, he got it first. Anyway, so I got it. And I'm looking through it, and Rabbi Yosef Engel quotes Shalos Teshuvas Mahari Vayel. Mahari Vayel is one of the Kadmonim. Minhagei Ashkenaz are based on Mahari Vayel and the Maharil, and Mahari Vayel says something out of this world. This is in the Sefer Shchitois Ubedikois Mahari Vayel. He said the gematria of Chametz, which is 138, is the same as the gematria Pegima. Okay? Now I'm not telling you a gematria that I thought of, yesterday afternoon. And if I would, you would have to respect that, at least at the shir, But I'm not telling you a gematria that I just made up. I'm telling you a gematria of a kadmon, of a rishon. If a rishon says a gematria, it has very deep meaning, especially the Mahari Vayel. The gematria of Chametz is the same as Pegima. Does anybody know what a Pegima is? Pegima is when you have a knife, the knife has to be perfectly smooth. If it's not perfectly smooth, it disqualifies the shchita. Now, that's why the shoichet checks the knife. He rubs his finger against the knife. He rubs his nail against the knife many times to make sure it's perfectly smooth. Chametz is gematria Pegima. So the Hagois Mahari Vayel asks, who cares? He says, to tell you that just like Chametz is asur b'mashehu, if you have even the slightest nick in the knife is pasul. So let's say, for example, it's Pesach. Before Pesach, Chametz could become batal. Your wife's cooking chicken soup on Pesach. There's somebody eating a sandwich on the front porch. The door opens, the wind blows, and a crumb that is almost microscopic falls into the chicken soup. So there is 20 billion times more chicken soup than the crumb of chametz. Are you allowed to have the chicken soup? You can't. Chametz is not even batal in 1,000. That's why the halacha is, if I'm eating fleishiks over here, salami sandwich, could you eat egg and cheese over here on the same table? Could you eat milchiks and fleishiks on the same table? As long as there's a hecker on the table, you could eat milchiks and fleishiks. Hecker means you put something on the table that doesn't usually belong there. You put a box of batteries. You put this. Or you use, what's in here? You put my phone. You put a placemat. You put a placemat on the table. You put a tablecloth. Could I eat here and you eat mamish right next to me within a millimeter of my food? Yeah. Yeah, but maybe some of your fleishiks will fall into my milchiks. Who cares? If it does, it's batal b'shishim. What about chametz? Am I allowed to eat? I'm in great adventures. Now that was your first mistake. That was your first mistake. You're out of your mind. You're going to wait now for 3 hours to be... Now, they just came out with a study. See, I thought it was... If somebody has kidney stones, it's actually good to go on a roller coaster because it shakes you up so violently, it can actually dislodge the stone and help it come out. That is the only benefit out of going on these things. If you enjoy spending money and sitting on a line for 3 hours and then eating an egg and rosemary chocolate on a big table, then go ahead, no problem. Now that was free advice, by the way. Now, but you went to Great Adventures, and there's a big table. So there's a guy on the other end of the table, he's eating a salami sandwich. He's eating bread. The table is 1 mile long. Could you eat matzah on the other end of the table? Can't. Why? The wind might blow, take a crumb of his chametz, and blow it into your food, and it's not even batal in 1,000. That's the halacha. It's not a chumrah, it's a halacha psuka. Okay? Chametz is not batal. So the reason why chametz is gematria pegima is to say, just like a knife, a pegima kolshehu passes a knife, a tiny bit of chametz is a problem. And the remez is, it says, loy sishchat al chametz dam zivchi. Don't shecht the carbon Pesach while you have chametz. So we see there's a connection between shchita and chametz. Chametz is aser b'mashehu. A pegima is aser b'mashehu. Okay? So you look at this and you say, what is the connection between chametz? Chametz is leavened bread and a notch in a knife. What in the world is the connection between an imperfect knife and chametz? And Rabbi Yosef Engel says a beautiful lashon. Rabbi Yosef Engel says in the Gilyoinei Hashas on Pesachim Daf Beis Amud Aleph, it's about halfway through. V'noida, I want you to see it inside. I want you to see these words inside. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 lines. Number 5. V'noida shekol divrei harishonim kegach alei eish. All the words of the Rishonim are like coals of fire. Meaning, if the Rishonim say an analogy, then you could be sure there's so much layer of depth and depth and depth in the analogy comparing chametz to a notch in a knife. So Rabbi Yosef Engel says like this. Question, what do you call an animal? Let's say you have an animal, a cow. What's the cow's name? Rabbi Yitz, what do you want to name the cow? Betsy. Betsy? I was going to say something else, but I'll go with you. Shkoyach, you're a long-time member of the shir. I will honor your name. Okay? Betsy. What do you call Betsy? You take the knife. It has a little notch in the knife. You shecht her. But it was a puzzle knife. What do you call Betsy? You call her dead. Dead. Okay? What if the knife was perfectly smooth and you shecht her? She's not dead. She's a shchuta. You elevated her. When she was saying mu, the deeper nowadays it's a big expression, the panemius, okay? The panemius of what Betsy was saying. What's the panemius of what Betsy was saying? She was saying, I want you to eat me on Shabbos Kodesh. So she's not dead, she's elevated to ro'i la'achila. Meaning the difference between a good knife and a pogrom knife is misa, not misa. Misa and chayim. Must be, says Rabbi Yosef Engel, just like the difference between a good knife and a pogrom knife is misa and the opposite of misa, the difference between chametz and matzah must be death and life. Okay, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? So let's try to uncover Rabbi Yosef Engel doesn't really say further. Let's try to uncover the meaning of what the analogy between chametz and a knife which is pagam, and just like a knife which is pagam creates misa, and a good knife preserves the state and the objective of the animal, how would that apply to chametz and matzah? Okay, Marv Rabbi, let me share with you. There is a great sefer that was written on Mishnayos. It's called Machon Maggid Harakiah. The Machon Maggid Harakiah was written by Rabbi Yetzer of Amsterdam. Rabbi Yetzer of Amsterdam lived a few hundred years ago, before the times of Rabbi Yaakov Emden. It's considered one of the earliest Sfarim of Kabbalistic drush, but it's so important that it's brought lahalacha. So, for example, when the Chassam Sofer talks about why we don't say Tachnun in Chodesh Nisan, and there's a question, the days after Nisan don't really have a reason not to say Tachnun, Chassam Sofer in his Hagois and Shulchan Aruch will quote the Machon Maggid Harakiah that the last 7 days of Nisan are reserved for the inauguration of the third Beis HaMikdash. The Machon Maggid Harakiah wrote a Perush on Mishnayos al pi Kabbalah. So, for example, he'll tell you the significance of the number of prakim in each Masechta, the significance of the name of the Masechta, the significance of the Rashi Tevois of the Mishnayos. So imagine you have a Mishnah. You take the first letter of each word, he'll add up the first letter of the whole Mishnah. It will be like 1,700, and he'll find a pasuk in Chumash that it's out of this world. Machon Maggid Harakiah says, tomorrow night you're going to search for your chametz. You're going to be mavato your chametz. You're going to burn your chametz. The whole inyan of nullifying chametz, burning chametz, is a remez to being mavatel the Yetzer Hara. Okay? Now, what does it mean being mavatel the Yetzer Hara? What process is there of bittul Yetzer Hara? The first thing we need to know is what the Yetzer Hara's name is. His name is Samach. Okay, we're going to introduce him to you. He knows you very well. The problem is, we don't know him at all. He knows you better than anyone. His name is Samach, Mem, Aleph, Lamed. Okay, the Samach Mem. Samach Mem, now you look at that name, the second half is like pretty good. It's Kel, it's the same as our name, Yisrael. But the first name, Samach, is the elixir of death. Sam Hamavas. Samach Mem, Aleph Lamed. Okay. Says the Machon Maggid Harakiah, searching for your chametz, nullifying your chametz, destroying your chametz, is a reflection, as a parallel, is a replica of the destruction of the Yetzer Hara. His name is Samach Mem Aleph Lamed. Where does this come from? The Zohar HaKadosh. The Zohar HaKadosh says the 7 days of Pesach, where we destroy the Yetzer Hara, is a replica, where we destroy Chametz, is a replica of destroying the Yetzer Hara. What pasuk in the Chumash talks about the destruction of the forces of evil? When we destroy Amalek. What pasuk talks about the destruction of Amalek? Ki Yod al Keis Ka. Yod is Yodalid. Which Yodalid? You think it means Purim? It doesn't just mean Purim. It means Yodalid Nisan. Erev Pesach. Erev Pesach, when you burn the Chametz and you destroy the Chametz, it's a replica, it's a reenactment of the destruction of the Yetzer Hara. Now, when will the Yetzer Hara be shechted? There's an idea we're going to shech the Yetzer Hara. Now, that's an interesting idea. What kind of knife are we going to use to shech the Yetzer Hara? What does that even mean? Isn't he a spiritual entity? How will we shech the Yetzer Hara? The pasuk says in Zechariah, V'haya le'es erev yi'ar. It will be toward evening. That's why we shech the carbon Pesach toward evening. The shchita, listen carefully. The shchita of the carbon Pesach is a reenactment of the shchita of the Yetzer Hara. That will happen twice in history. It happened in Mitzrayim and will happen la'asalavai. Says the Machon Maggid Harakiah, it's called Masechta Pesachim. There are two epic Pesachs. Back in the day in Egypt and la'asalavai. B'nisan nigalu u'b'nisan asidin lagael. There's an idea that la'asalavai Hashem is going to shecht the Malach HaMaves. By the way, The reason why there are 10 prakim in Masechta Pesachim is 5 prakim is for Pesachim A, that was in Mitzrayim, 5 letters, and 5 prakim are from Pesachim B, that was Pesach La'aseh Lavai. Take a look at number 7 in the 3rd paragraph. Shchitas ha-Pesach va'achilasa itzli merames al shchitas samach mem la'asid. La'asid lavai, God is going to slaughter the samach mem. Now, I'll just tell you, there's a famous machlokes between the Baal Shem Tov and the Shla HaKadosh, what it means that Hashem is going to shech the Yetzer Hara. His name is Samach Mem Aleph Lamed. The Baal Shem Tov says Hashem is going to remove the Aleph, and he's going to turn from 131, Samach Mem Aleph Lamed, to 130. Hashem is going to turn him from 131 to 130. The Shla HaKadosh says no. The Samach Mem part is the bad part. The Aleph Lamed part is the good part. Hashem is going to remove the Samach Mem, leave him with Kale, and then he's going to be Nishapech L'Tayv. Tonight's shir we're going to go with the Shla HaKadosh. Okay? But you should know, there are two ways that to understand that Hashem is going to shecht the Malach HaMaves, but it all has to do with removal of Ois. The Baal Shem says he's going to remove the Ois Aleph. The Shla says he's going to remove the Ois Samach Mem. So we have this idea that La'asid Lavai, Hashem's going to shecht the Yetzer Hara. By the way, if that sounds strange to you, you know it's an open Gemara. Please take a look at number 10. Darash Rabbi Yehuda, La'asid Lavai, Mevi'ai HaKadosh Baruch Hu Yetzer Hara. In the future, God's going to take the Yetzer Hara. V'shoichdai b'fnei tzadikim. He's going to shecht it before the tzadikim. U'v'fnei harishayim. The tzadikim, they're going to look at the Yetzer Hara. It's going to look like a big mountain. Har, har, har. By the way, har. What's the last letter of matzah? Hey, what's the last letter of marar? Reish. Har. To the Rishayim, it's going to look like a chud hasara. It's going to look like a little hair. And there's a lot to talk about on that. One of the ideas are, La'asid Lavai, Hashem's going to show the tzaddikim the Yetzer Hara, and the tzaddikim are going to say, how in the world did I ever overcome this big mountain? It looks so hard. I really served Hashem this way with such energy and such determination and overcoming laziness and overcoming my base instincts. The tzaddikim are going to be astounded that they ever overcame the Yetzer Hara. And the Rishayim are going to be so surprised that the Yetzer Hara looks so wimpy. How could they not overcome the Yetzer Hara? But the Gemara tells us, La'asid Lavai, God is going to shecht the Yetzer Hara. Says the Maserei Keach, Shchitas Korban Pesach is a reenactment of the slaughter of the Yetzer Hara. That's amazing. When we will shecht the Korban Pesach, when we did shecht the Korban Pesach, it was a reenactment of the Gemara in Kedushin, La'asid Lavai, Hashem's going to shecht the Yetzer Hara. He even says the Soifei Tevois of Matzah and Marar are Har. The tzaddikim see the Yetzer Hara as a Har. And the numerical value of Matzah Umarar with the letters are Chut Seyar. That's how the Risham see the Yetzer Hara. So it's interesting. That means when we're burning the Chametz, when we're looking for the Chametz, we're destroying the Chametz. That is a mission of destroying the Yetzer Hara. And the Shechita, the Korban Pesach, is the ultimate death of the Yetzer Hara and the Malach HaMaves. So I'm thinking, there's got to be a connection between the word Chametz and Pegima. Because after all, what would the connection be between Chametz and a puzzle knife? What are we shechting? What shechita does Chametz represent? That if you have Chametz in your house, it's like a puzzle knife. But now we're learning that the objective of eradicating Chametz is an exercise of reenacting the shechita of the Malach HaMaves La'asid Lavai. We shech the Korban Pesach le'es erev because the pasuk in Zechariah says Hashem will destroy and shech the Yetzer Hara le'es erev. In other words, in fact, the reason why Chametz and Pegima have the same numerical value is yes, if you shecht an animal correctly, it's not dead. If you shecht it incorrectly, it's dead. That means the difference between pegima and not pegima is chayim and maves. And the difference between chametz and matzah is, are you going to destroy the malach hamaves or you're not going to destroy the malach hamaves? The same way the difference between pegima and not pegima is the difference in life and death. The difference between chametz and matzah is literally the difference between life and death. Yes, malach hamaves, no malach hamaves. It's not like some random gematria. By the way, chametz and pegima have the same numerical value. No, the same way, if you shecht an animal with a kosher knife, it's not mace. If you shecht it with a treif knife, it's dead. That is actually the inherent difference between chametz and matzah. The destruction of chametz is the destruction of the angel of death, and if you don't destroy the chametz, then you have the angel of death in full force. It's the difference between chayim and maves. So how does the Haggadah end? V'yasa HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'shachat l'malach hamaves. Do you think it's a coincidence that is how the Haggadah ends? You think it's the Haggadah ends with this like fairy tale that God comes and shechs the malach hamaves. That's a very purposeful ending. It couldn't be more purposeful. The entire objective of Erev Pesach is to destroy the chametz, and by doing so, you're preparing yourself to be able to destroy the malach hamaves, and that's the tachlis of the Seder. The asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'shachat l'malach hamaves. So we thought, the piyut developed over the years, like 200 years ago, it fell into the Haggadah and it ends this way, but by then people are drunk and tired anyway. You could not have a more head-on, accurate ending to the Haggadah Shel Pesach. And we're just getting started. There is a peirush on the Haggadah called Medrash B'Chidush. Medrash B'Chidush was written by a Talmud of the Ramah Mipano. The Ramah Mipano was one of the great Talmidim of Reb Chaim Vital, of the Arizal. So this is from Rabbi Lezer Nachman Pua. And he wonders, why does Halach Ma'anya begin in Aramaic? He says, you know why? Because you know who speaks Aramaic? That Ramai, who's always accusing Klal Yisrael. We don't start Halach Ma'anya in Aramaic because Mazikin don't understand Aramaic and we don't want to invite the Mazikin to the table. No! We start Halach Ma'anya in Aramaic because we are offering a special invitation. You're not inviting me. I don't want to come to your Seder. I have my own Seder. You could invite me and as a pleasantry. Oh, you want to come to my Seder? By the way, I spoke to the Shvilei Pinchas last Wednesday, and I said, he told me that he's here for Pesach, so I invited him to my Seder. So he said, no, he has to be with his children. So I said, Rebbe, your children heard you already. They know what you're going to say. I never heard you. He says, Glatstein, not only did my children never hear me, I never heard myself. Whatever I said in the past has no bearing on what I'm going to say this. I didn't even begin to learn the Haggadah. Anyway, I saw this Marakam in the Shvia Pinchas's Haggadah. Says Rabbi Lezer Nachman Pua, the reason Halach Ma'anya begins in Aramaic is not because we don't want the Mazikin to come. It's because we're inviting the Mazikin to the table. And this is the language that they speak. And you know who specifically we want to invite? The Samach Mem. We are extending an invitation to the Samach Mem. You're not extending an invitation to your brother-in-law. First of all, you don't want your brother-in-law to come. You're not extending an invitation to your third cousin. You want him to stay home. You're not extending an invitation to anyone other than the Mazikin. This is the language they speak. So Chazal selected the language. Now, why are we inviting the Mazikin to our table? And the Medrash B'Chidush says like this. This is the Talmud of the Ramah Mipano. He says, we just spent the last 30 days getting rid of every vestige of Samach Mem, namely the Chametz. He's not happy with you. He's not happy that you can't even find one Cheerio under the radiator in your house. You took the toothbrush, you got under the radiator like you be a car mechanic and you're like scraping the inside. Oh look, I found chametz. Pal, that's not chametz, that's lint from the 1940s. Okay, you think that's a chametz. Yeah? Your house is so gleaming clean. And whatever dust, you sprayed it with like toxic chemicals, Your house is clean. And if there's no chametz, that means there's no Yetzer Hara. And if there's somebody very upset with you, the Samach Mem is not happy with you. So he's out to get you. He is going to be makatrig on you. So the same way on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, you got to throw the Samach Mem a bone. So what do? You give a carbon to Sa'ir, the Sar HaMishtalech. The night of the Seder, you need to throw the Samach Mem a bone. So you say, Halach ma'anya. He says, me? You want me back? You just spent 30 days getting rid of me. You're talking to me? Yeah, we're talking to you. Says Medrash B'Chidush, the mashal is, if you have a dog barking in the king's palace, what does the king say? Throw him a bone. Before we start eating, throw him a bone. Because you don't throw him a bone, he's going to be barking the whole meal. Just give him a bone with some meat, straggling on it, and this way he doesn't get involved in the Suda. So too, the night of the Seder, if you think you're going to have a nice Seder and say all your gematrias and Maisa Shahayas and Maisa Shaloi Hayas, he's not going to let you do it unless you throw him a bone. You know what the bone is? Halach ma'anya diacholu avarsenu. But he takes this further. So we say, we don't want him to make an ayin hara on our Suda. And we say, we're inviting you to the meal. We'd like you to invite you to the meal. We say, Kol dichvin yesei v'yechal. Come, Samach Mem. Come into my house. We'd like you to enjoy the meal with me. You know what this is like? We could be Mekayim the Inyan Imrav Sainacha Hachilehu Lechem. If your enemy is hungry, feed him bread. You know what the end of the pasuk is? Ki gacholim ata choisa roishai. You're stoking coals on his head. When your enemy is hungry, feed them bread. It's not that we don't want the mazikim to come. We're dafka inviting the mazikin. Why? To kill them. We're going to kill the Samach Mem the night of the Seder. We did pretty good Erev Pesach. We shechted the Karban Pesach. That's a reenactment of Asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu Lishchait Malach HaMaves. We did pretty good destroying the Chametz. We did pretty good searching for the Chametz, but we're going to really destroy him for good the night of the Seder. So we say, the best way to destroy somebody is with kindness. I'm not sure I should say it. Basically, there was once a guy giving me a hard time. In a place, I'm not going to say where, you don't know where, okay? Don't worry, you don't say you know, I'm telling you don't know. Anyway, Baruch Hashem, in any shul that I had the privilege to be in, there's no talking about the davening. There was one guy giving me a hard time. I didn't know what to do with this guy. So as a last resort, the guy wasn't cooperating. I invited him to my house. Ad hayoim, I've never seen him again. I don't know what happened to him. I wish him well. Chazal say, Imrav soinacha hachilehu lechem. Okay? Where is this principle used? It was used against Haman. The Gemara says in Megillah Tesvav Amabez, the Gemara says, why did Esther invite Haman to the Suda? So the Gemara says, Rabbi Shua Omer, she learned it from her father. Imrav soinacha hachilehu lechem. If, this is number 12, if your enemy is hungry, feed them bread. The end of the pasuk is, Ki gacholim ata choisa roishai. Says Rabbi Yitzchak of Barditchev, you know what does the pasuk say after Haman left Esther's Suda? It says, Vayetze Haman b'yomahu sameach v'toiv leiv. Haman left that day happy and good-hearted. He sounds like Mamish, a chassid. He sounds like a Baal Madrega, Sameach v'toiv leiv. Chazal say about Boaz, Vayitav liboy b'divrei Torah. It sounds like he's on a groisa Madrega. He left Esther's Suda, Sameach v'toiv leiv. It sounds like he's a Baal Ruach HaKodesh. Says Rav Levi Yitzchak, that's exactly how Esther killed him. He says, the Lamdus is like this. You see, Tzadikim are holy, Jews are holy, and their source comes from Sitra Kedusha, the side of Kedusha. The wicked, their chiyus comes from the sitra achra, the samach mem. Okay, so let's say we over here, we are connected to kedusha. Our source of life comes from kedusha, and we're ba'atim hadvekim Hashem alekechem chaim kolchem hayom. We're attached to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But Rishaim are attached to the samach mem. You know how you kill a rasha? If you influence them with a little kedusha, you pull them away from the sitra achra, but they're not connected enough to keep alive. And once they're disconnected from the sitra achra, they're dead. That's the process. Chassam Sofer writes about this in many places. When the Amoira would look at a rasha, and the rasha would become a pile of bones, what's the procedure? Procedure is, by them looking at the rasha, they attach the rasha to kedusha. The rasha becomes disconnected from tumah, and then the rasha dies. So what happened was Esther, by feeding Haman, she gave him a suda of ruchnias. That schlepped him away from the sitra achra. The problem is he wasn't really connected to ruchnias. So even though for a moment he looked like a groiser rebbe, sameach b'toiv leiv, the next day he's dead. He's hanging. So the process of killing the rasha al yedei the suda is what you do is you draw them slightly to kedusha, they become disconnected from tumah, and then they have no life source at all. So that's what Esther did to Haman. And according to the Sefer Medrash B'Chidush, that's what we're doing to the Samach Mem, the night of the Seder. We say, Samach Mem, come to our meal, come have some matzah, have shulchan oirech. And we talked to him in his language, in his sprach, halachma anya. His eyes lit up. You know, at the beginning of the night we say, Baruch atah Hashem, Baruch atah Hashem l'kenem l'chaylam, barahei pri hagafen. Lashon HaKodesh, he doesn't know what to do with himself. He wants to be makatreg. But then we make him feel very comfortable. We say, ha lachma anya da'achalo. It's like music to his ears when he hears the language of the mazikim. So the Samach Mem says, kol dichven yeseh v'yechal. He's looking around. Nobody else understands this except for him. They must be inviting me to their meal. You know, they've been cleaning me out for 30 days, but they're starting the meal. I thought this was going to be bad for me. This is wonderful. They're inviting me to the meal. Little does he know that we're luring him into a suda of kedusha to do to him what Esther did to Haman. So the Suda begins, come Samach Mem, look, come, I'm very hospitable to you. I'm even speaking your language. But what we're going to do is, according to the Shla, the Samach Mem Aleph Lamed, is what letters are we going to remove? Samach Mem. What's he going to be left with? Kale. By the end of the Haggadah, we did such a good job. You know what the Haggadah says? V'yasa HaKadosh Baruch Hu v'shachat l'malach ha'maves. We did our job. We invited him in, and he fell for it. He starts eating the matzah, the marar, the koirech, the beitza, the shulchan oirech, the kampot, and the afikoiman, and he's dead. He's dead. The dalika, he's gone. He's gone. So, the Shvile Pinchas points out in his Haggadah. Now, you know, we have a series this year. It's called Pesachenu Megadim. We connect the beginning of the parsha to the end of the parsha. Well, let's connect the beginning of the Haggadah to the end of the Haggadah. Just like the Haggadah begins in Aramaic. Why? To lure in the Samach Mem. Why? To kill him. That's exactly how the Haggadah ends in Aramaic. V'asa. V'asa is not Lashon Kodesh, it's Aramaic. The whole Gadya is Aramaic. Halachma anya is Aramaic. And Gadya is Aramaic. And it ends the same way it began to lure in the Malchamos. Now, there's this piyut right before Gadya. Adirhu, Avdirhu, Yivne Beisa, right? We say, Kael B'nei, B'nei Beischa B'karov. How many times do we say B'nei? Kael B'nei, B'nei, 3 times B'nei. How many times are you going to say it? And how many times do we say Kael? Why are we asking Kael should be B'nei? Why not Hashem? Why not Elokim? Why not Tzavakos? Why not Shakai? All of a sudden, Kael B'nei. Why Kael B'nei? Well, there are 2 Kaels. One kale is us. We're called kale. Vayikra loy Hashem. The pasuk says by Yaakov Avinu that Hashem called him. Vayikra loy kale elokei Yisrael. Yaakov Avinu is called kale. The Gemara Megillah says elokei Yisrael kara liYaakov kale. Who else is called kale? The Samach Mem after we kill him. So we say, Rivanisham, we got him in, we lured him in, we reeled him in. How do we reel him in? Halach ma'anya. We reeled him in. Now he's not Samach Mem anymore. Now he's kale. So we got two kales. Kale, b'nei, kale, b'nei. And this time for good and for real. The third b'nei is for the third Beis HaMikdash. So we say kale twice to indicate that we have two kales over here. We were zoicha to shecht the Malach HaMaves. You know, what did Yaakov Avinu call the Beis HaMikdash? Avraham called it Har. Yitzchak called it Seder. Yaakov called it Bayis. Shenemar Beis Kale. Yaakov Avinu called the third Beis HaMikdash Beis Kale. Why is it called Beis Kale? Guess what we're going to do over there? Right before we build it, we take the Samach Mem, we shecht him on the Mizbeach, he becomes Kale. The name of the house, says the Shvila Pinchas, is Beis Kale. This is a revolutionary understanding of the entire avodah of Bedikas Chametz and Biur Chametz and Shchitas Karim Pesach. What we're doing is we are eradicating the Malach HaMaves. The Malach HaMaves is analogous to the Chametz. We understand the deeper meaning of why Chametz is Gematria Pegima. Because just like the difference between a knife that has a Pegima and a knife that doesn't have a Pegima is Chayim and Maves, the difference between Chametz and Matzah is if you have Chametz, you are not successful in destroying the Malach HaMaves. If you don't have Chametz, you are successful in destroying. It's the difference between literally not just particular life and death, but the concept of life and the concept of death. The angel of life and the angel of death. And it begins at the very start of the Haggadah. We start in Aramaic. Rashi says, no, we don't want the mazikim to come in. Maybe that's a pipshutai. The student of the Ramami Panu says just the opposite. We specifically invite the Malach HaMaves into our house. We ask him to come in. He doesn't know what he's getting into. He thought he's in for a big Suda. He thinks we're just throwing him a bone. We pull up a chair. We say, Hachnasas Orchim means inviting friends. Come, come, come. He comes into the house. You got to be careful. And by the time the night is over, we lull him into a nice nursery rhyme, just like Jack and Jill went up the hill. And what's the end? Jack came rolling down, and then his head came rolling down. Same thing with the Malach HaMaves. By the time of the end of the Haggadah, we have a nice nursery rhyme. V'asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'shachat l'Malach HaMaves, and just like Halach Ma'anya began in Aramaic, it ends Pesachenu Megadim, it ends the way it started, and that is V'asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the way we did that is we have the two kales. We have kale from Yisrael, kale from the Samach Mem, and in that zechus, we should all be zoicha, B'nei Beischa B'karayv. So, wish everyone Freilichen, Kosher, and Yom Tov, Chag Kosher V'Sameach, should be Zoicha, B'Tesva B'Nisan Nigalu, U'B'Tesva B'Nisan Asidan Ligal. Shkoyach everyone, Agon Yom Tov.